Hey, welcome everyone to the Archicad User Monthly Webinar for October 2023. My name is Eric Bobrow, and during the next few minutes, hour or two, depending on how long we go, we'll be talking about Archicad and taking a look primarily today at Archicad 27, which, as most of you know, is the newest, latest version of the software. I've been working with the software with Archicad since 1989. So, God, that's 44 years. No, 34 years, not quite 40, 34 years. I'm starting with version 3.42, as I recall. I've been through a lot of updates. I'm going to give you some perspective on the update or upgrade process and some of the way I see Graphisoft moving in a roadmap towards the future. We'll be taking a look at a few of the practical aspects of migrating projects and templates as well. And I'll be open to your questions because I have to be honest, I haven't had a lot of time to explore Archicad 27, so I'm not an expert on 27. I'm an expert on Archicad in general. And I'm also realizing that since I haven't been spending as much time in the software, that there are parts of it that I, don't really know very well, like the interface with structural engineers or mechanical HVAC, et cetera, consultants, and the IFC, the things that go off with Revit. So, I'll be talking for those areas in more general senses based on my long-term experience rather than any practical experience using 27 on a real project. That being said, I think we should cover some interesting ground today, and I'm looking forward to getting your questions and having a little dialogue. So please type into the chat area to let me know where you're calling in from. If you have a specific question about either 27 or just Archicad in general, please type that in, and I may open up the microphone at different points and have a little chat with you, and we'll take a look together. So I see Mario Lordero from Rio. Okay. And Rosemary Muller has a question about selecting a few objects from the main model or from an option and duplicating them into a different option. Okay, that's a good question. One of the major, or probably the major new feature in Archicad 27 is called design options. And it allows you to explore several different versions of a part of your project, or could be the whole project, but typically we're talking about different versions of the kitchen or different versions of the facade, or is it a one-story building versus a two-story building, things like that. So where there is a base model, and then there are some things that are different from one to another. Okay, and Rosemary asks, can windows be in design options while the wall is existing in the base option? So we'll take a look at that. All right, and Eric Gedney, love to hear about wish list items, like it's about time upgrades. Okay, well, certainly we can discuss that, although I don't have any insider information. I was a reseller for over 20 years, but in recent years, I've been just a consultant out, like all of you as users of the software. And so I don't have any real insights in terms of wish list stuff, but I will talk a little bit about the roadmap that Graphisoft has created, which gives us a picture of what they're focusing on. All right, so I see DS from Carmel, Indiana, Dave from Plano, Texas, Chris from Denver. All right, Mackenzie from Los Angeles, from Tracy Stone's office. Nice to see you. Dave Cornell, session recorded for later reference? Yeah, they're always recorded. I post them on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Eric Bobrow. And when I get around to it, I post it on Archicad User on the archicaduser.com website. And you can see here's the front page, and haven't posted things. I skipped August because I was traveling, but there should be a July and September one here, but you can see this is the recording from June. So I am a little bit behind there, but I will post it there. But if you go to my YouTube channel, if we go to youtube.com/Eric Bobrow, you'll see here is the clinic from September, so I'm current there. All right. Okay. Rob says, good to see you. Rob from the UK, Rob Hancock, and I've always enjoyed joining into your videos when time permits. You've upgraded to 27 and still not got to grips with the design options feature yet, as this will be quite a key feature for me. Okay. Well, we're going to be talking about this. So we do have about 50 people on the line. So please fill in, where you're calling in from. Always interesting to see how far, whether we get all the continents aside from Antarctica. I think, sometimes we have gotten, from people from Tokyo and people from Australia and down under, as well as South America, South Africa, etc., and the UK and Europe. All right, so let us take a look. Now, I'm going to start with just saying that I've been exploring Archicad 27. I got the software installed a couple of weeks ago, so I've just played with it a little bit. I've been reading articles here. This is a very nice article in aecmag.com. So if you just typed in AEC magazine Archicad, you would find this one. And this is a really good overview. Let me just make it a little larger so you can maybe read a little bit of it while I have it on the screen. It talks about Graphisoft, the developer of Archicad, and the history a little bit, and then what it's doing these days. One of the things that they point out is that Graphisoft is owned by Nemetschek. It was purchased back in 2007 or 8, somewhere in there, by a German company that also has another BIM software called Allplan. And Nemetschek has built a little empire of not only Allplan and Archicad, Graphisoft, but Vectorworks is part of their umbrella. But they also have structural and mechanical and building quality checking, Solibri, are all part of their portfolio. And what they're starting to do is to connect these up more actively. And this is something I remember when this first happened, when the purchase happened, was, well, will they keep Archicad as a separate thing? Will they try to merge Archicad and Vectorworks, which were purchased around the same time, and with Allplan? They've kept all the individual brands, but over time, and more slowly than I'd like, they've been connecting up the structural and mechanical and other things to it. Now, Archicad with these affiliated softwares can compete, I would say, just in general terms, with Revit's suite in terms of covering, so much of the bases of the building industry. Not quite sure about the construction side. At one point, Graphisoft had a tool called Constructor that was about managing construction, estimating and project management for teams, and sort of figuring out, well, if we work on this phase here and that, and have this team over here doing stuff, how could we optimize the construction sequencing, etc. That then was rolled out as a separate company, and I'm not even quite sure whether how that exists or whatever. But within let's say the design process, we now have, let's say, robust connections to all sorts of structural, mechanical, and other disciplines, as well as the fact that Archicad has been consistently a leader with interoperability with what's called IFC. Now, here's a little just visual of the design options. I'm just going to explain for a moment what I understand about this, and then we will actually take a look within Archicad. So the concept of design options is that you say in a particular area of interest. So here they're talking about building mass, curtain wall facade, and furniture layout. So these are 3 different areas of focus. It could be front and back. It could be the kitchen and the landscaping. It could be any areas that you would say, well, we're going to try out 3 different versions of the kitchen or things like that. So you can have as many design options in any particular area as you wish. 2 or 3 would be pretty common. Within each one of them, you're going to have combinations. And just like layer combinations, where you say, hey, when I'm doing floor plans, I want certain layers on. I don't necessarily want the roof, and I don't necessarily want the landscaping, etc. Maybe I don't want furniture because it's not part of the structure that we're doing a floor plan for. So a layer combination, you click to select that and it turns on and off certain layers. In the same way, you can have design option combinations, and each one of these, when you click on it, will have some combination of the front facade with the big windows and the kitchen with this, etc. So each one determines some combination, but a little bit distinct from the, let's say, the way that layers are managed is that it's very easy then to switch on the fly to a custom group. So say you have one of these defined, it says left side layout A here. Well, it says this is custom, but basically you see with the eyeballs. All right, so what does the eyeball mean? It means this particular group of elements is turned on. And this one here, design option A, they're turned on. Now, if you click on a different eyeball in this design option manager, you're going to turn on another group of elements and turn off the original one. So these are mutually exclusive. They're different variations. Whereas you can, of course, have A here and the middle one here, or the bottom one, or the front one, the top one here. So you can choose any one of these, any one of those. It's sort of like a menu, in a restaurant. Well, I'll have this for my appetizer, I'll have that for my main course, etc. But in general, you may only get one appetizer and only one entree. These aren't necessarily small and big and dessert, but you get the idea. So these are presets, but at any given time, you can have a custom set of options, which means you can, while in a meeting or while working on design, switch between any area group. And it is fantastic conceptually. And I think they've worked out a lot of the, let's say, challenges on it. And just, I'm waving my hands now, I'm not demonstrating it, but I'll just say, in the past, we could set some elements on one layer or a set of layers and other elements on a different set of layers and switch back and forth. You could do that, but it became hard to do that quickly. And if you wanted to have one version of the kitchen and a different version of the facade, you'd have all these different layers to manage. So this is much easier. It's also, since many of these are going to be on the same layers as everything else, like, different versions of the interior walls for the layout, it's not like you want to have multiple layers for the interior walls. You just want to say, these are interior walls. Oh, and this configuration is version 1 of the interior, and this other configuration version 2. Now, that being said, there's what's called the main model only, and what that is essentially what we want to, at any given time, say, this is constant for all variations. This is the base, and that's the context or environment. And the other stuff is then selectively chosen to fit in. And there is a question, I know that Rosemary asked about, can you take elements from one option and put them into another or copy them over? We'll take a look at that. I'm pretty sure there is. I haven't tested it, but that would make some sense. I don't think you can say this wall is part of option A and B, but not C. But I think you can probably copy that wall from A to B and have that manage very easily. So we'll take a quick look at that. All right, so just scrolling down here, something I hadn't even realized because I just hadn't seen it until just the last day, is that they put in some more AI visualization or put in some AI visualization. Now, what I was aware of in terms of 27 is that Graphisoft has really broadened its connections to the rendering universe. So what is a rendering universe? Well, in the 3D window, Archicad can give you pretty good representation of the design, and you can move around it and you can select elements and edit or even draw in 3D. But they've never put in the effort to try to make it fantastically beautiful and high quality rendering. It's been pretty good enough for a designer to work with, not up to the level that, other tools that specialize in rendering can do. So now there are connections with Twinmotion, with Enscape, with other tools, and a general purpose one using a format called FBX. And I don't know what that stands for, but it is a tool for, or a format for taking model information with rendering surfaces from one program to another. Now, the AI stuff is a little separate in that if you've been following any of the stuff that's been in the news, it's been a big topic since certainly about a year ago. I think I remember ChatGPT starting to be talked about actively maybe in November or December of last year. At least that's when I heard about it. So with these new AI tools, there are two branches, I would say, that we see commonly in, just in the news. One has to do with words and the other has to do with images. So with words, you can ask ChatGPT a question, or you can say, please write something up, or please summarize something, and you can provide it raw materials like, please read this stuff and then write something from it, write a summary of it, or write a longer article, or give me an outline, all sorts of things where essentially it's like having a somewhat intelligent personal assistant, maybe a college student, you could say, who could do some good writing for you. Separate from that are tools like Midjourney, and there's some other ones out there where you can basically say, hey, I'd like to see an image of, of a contemporary home in a forest. Or you could be saying something based on Frank Lloyd Wright's, falling water in the middle of the city, or whatever. You can have more textural things like, and I want lots of trees, or I want chrome and steel and glass. And somehow, having scanned the internet for images and understanding it to some extent in terms of, well, this is architecture here, and this has windows of a certain type, it synthesizes designs or just scenes, different people in a room. So it's somehow does some pretty amazing things. But the problem with those tools for design is that you might say, I want a 3-bedroom farmhouse with a contemporary design placed in a field. Okay, but it's not going to have necessarily the right area. It's not going to have any, sense of layout. It's not like it understands the floor plan that you're thinking of or that you have created. Now, but there's nothing to say that it couldn't. And so what I believe is mentioned here is that they're taking, it says one of the problems with these conceptual image generators is that they are hard to control and they don't always deliver consistency. But by using a BIM model as a constraint, you can focus the power of it to automatically generate all sorts of architectural treatments to a proposed building. Now that's pretty interesting, because let's say you have a design, maybe it's just in concept, and you say, take this design and put it in with this type of landscaping, or put it in with different types of windows. Don't know how far this will go, but now we're talking about, just like, to some extent, like what you do in an office, where you sketch out something and you hand it to someone else who's skillful and say, do this with it, add more detail, add these things, change this around. Now, how well will this fit into the workflow? No one really knows, but it's been surprisingly powerful. Some of the things that we see, and some of my clients in Architect Marketing Institute who use Archicad, in fact, have said, yeah, I've taken some stuff in and I've just had it create some imaginary context and some things. And they said, we can't really take the design that it's creating, but it quickly gives us some ideas. And it says, oh, this is really great, because I can then say, now that's a nice touch, and actually then model it in Archicad. So we'll see how this works. You can see some images here in this article about it. So it's part of a product roadmap that Graphisoft released last year. Let me actually click on this and open up that roadmap. Now this is an interesting thing. Graphisoft used to keep all their development under wraps, sort of like, we're working on some great stuff, and you'll see it when we release it. And it was sort of like, we don't want anyone else to do the work on the same thing, like Revit. Now, they're recognizing that, sure, you don't want to necessarily reveal all the details before it's ready and fully cooked, but it's good to tell people what you're working on, get feedback, and have some users say, oh, wow, but can you also fit this in? Or, whatever feedback they can get. So here's AI assisted design and documentation, centralized template management, all of these things. So these are generally here, you can say, hey, I don't really care about structural and I don't care about MEP. So only show me the stuff that has to do with architecture. Well, seems that most of this has to do with it. Here, I can say, coming soon. All right, so here's some things. This is something that actually, is part of Archicad 27 here that are, well, they have it in their roadmap as coming soon, but this was actually part of 27. In progress would be other things, and under research, they're saying, this is stuff that we're looking at. It may come out at some point, and then there's an idea pool. So this is interesting. I appreciate that Graphisoft is doing that, and I haven't really looked at how they get the, here's released. Okay, design options, distance guides. Okay, there. So I haven't really looked at, how you give feedback to Graphisoft, but I imagine there's some place. Nothing visual on the page here. Maybe welcome here. What's in the pipeline? Tell us what you think, and join our community. And okay, so that would be how you work with it. If you did want to find this, on your own, you can just type in to do a Google search for Graphisoft roadmap or Graphisoft product roadmap or public roadmap here. Okay, so let me just see who else has said hello. So Maria from Louisville, Texas. Daniel Wyckoff says, can anyone report how well wall cleanup occurs between two options? Okay, so that'll be an interesting thing. If anyone has some feedback, go ahead and share it. My understanding from what they wrote is that it's very smart. It will clean up only the things that you have visible. So, things that when you switch things from one version to another, one design option to another, it ignores the stuff that's hidden, which is different than the layer management, where unless you're careful when you hide layers, they can interact with layers that are visible. So that's sort of a manual process of saying, when I hide this, maybe I don't want to show where the interior walls connect to the exterior walls. I don't want to have a little gap where they meet. So let me put the interior walls on a different layer intersection group. There were ways to manage that, but this seems to be more automatic. If you're not showing design option A, then don't try to clean up something to it. Seems like a relatively straightforward decision. Hey, we're just going to only clean up things that are in the current design set of options. So once you make that decision, then then it becomes, something that they can follow through on. All right. So David John Rulon, is this also a coaching call? Can I send you a question on your Archicad 25 project I'm working on? No, today, this is the Archicad user webinar. The Archicad coaching program will start around 3 or 3:15 today, David. And we can look at your Archicad 25 project at that time. I will be answering some questions and probably having a little chat about Archicad 27 stuff during today's thing. So it's a little bit of coaching, but not quite the same as what you're talking about. And I see Acton Design Services from Salt Lake City. Okay, so please, we're up to 73 people here, which is great. Do fill in, say hello, say where you're calling in from. And if you have some questions or some feedback, if you've been playing with 27, then we'll, certainly I welcome it a little bit interactive. All right, I've been talking a lot, and I'm going to finish up just going through the article pretty quickly, and then we'll take a look at some things in Archicad. So it talked about Enscape here. This is one of the rendering tools, and one of the nice things that I've seen is that Enscape is now available for Mac OS. It has been on Windows for a long time, and just this year they are now made it available for Mac. I'm looking forward to playing around with that. From what I gather, Enscape, somewhat similar to Twinmotion. I'm not quite sure whether one would be easier or one would be higher quality. They're both, really pushing the limits in terms of beautiful, natural looking imagery. Okay, project manageability, they do have a bunch of things that just make it easier to find things, easier to manage things, turn things on and off, edit, change the definition of things, etc. Okay, we talked or mentioned distance guides for placing elements. We can take a look at that. Okay, support for version 27 supports Revit families and Revit design files, geometry exchange, and it says with Revit 24 here. Now I've seen some stuff saying Revit 2023, so I'm not actually sure. We're in 2023 calendar year, but Autodesk always names its releases 1 year ahead, so they come out, I think, typically in the spring. If you're in the northern hemisphere, like April, May, June timeframe, and the one that came out this spring is called Revit 2024. So I'm not quite sure about that. Some minor modifications to the Archicad tracker we can take a look at. Now, BIMcloud and BIMX I won't be looking at today, but they've enhanced that, and they're definitely working on making it more an integrated part of a workflow. Well, what does integration mean? In this case, it means that you could go out on site of a construction project and query the model, the Archicad model, to see stuff in there, and also to make notes like this is being installed incorrectly, or we have a question, RFI about some things here. Obviously, sometimes there are conflicts or things that are different in the as-built or in the field than they are in the design. And this allows also some markup. I think also this could be used in design. Actually, I'm certain it can be, because you can share something with someone who doesn't necessarily even have any CAD tool, but has the BIMX on their tablet, and then they can mark it up and say, this should be changed, or I have a question about that. So it's a nice article. Here's Marton Kiss, VP of Product Success, who gives some context to the whole thing. All right, so this is a really good article. It sort of supplements, I would say, if we go to the Graphisoft site and you go to, Archicad, well, just the home page here, and you say Discover Archicad, and, here's what's new, and you can watch some videos. You can click on this, and this has a 3-minute summary of some of these things, and you can learn more about each area. That being said, let's dive into Archicad 27. Now, I'm bringing up right now the sample project that I use in Master Template. And for those of you who may not have been following me for very long and don't know, Master Template is a robust project template that I created with, in conjunction with an architect named Scott Bulmer back in 2007. So we're talking about 16 years ago. Our aim was to put all of the smarts that we could into the template to make life easier for users. And it's been continuously updated and developed ever since. So since Archicad 10 or 11 when it started, to Archicad 27. And I do have Master Template 27 pretty much ready to go. Probably release that. I'm going to aim to release it, say something like next week. You know, I'll be mentioning a few things in here, but I will say the migration of a project from 26 to 27 was virtually flawless. So that's a good news. I was able to open up the template from 26 in 27, came up, looked fine. It used migration library. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, to support versions of library parts that had been swapped out by Graphisoft. I found that it actually didn't even need the migration library. That from 26 to 27, they didn't have anything that I saw that had been removed and replaced with better versions. So on the one hand, it's like, well, I didn't do much with the object library. Maybe they added a few more things, but they didn't, you know, update some things like the doors and windows or cabinets there, or at least they didn't update it in a way that they felt you had to manually swap. But that made it very simple to do that. I brought in this little sample project, which, you know, is not a big project. I did see two very odd things here where a couple of walls sort of disappeared from the view, leaving the doors and windows in place. It was very odd, like, you know, you had them floating in space, and I ended up having to sort of rebuild a couple of things. So I just discovered that last night. So I don't think it's necessarily worth investigating on screen with you, but I will say that in general, everything just came through. So that was very good. Now, what do we have that's new here in Archicad? I mean, if you're used to Archicad 26 or recent versions since 20, you know, the interface on the left side, well, it looks the same. Maybe there's, I don't know, is there something different there? I don't see it. The interface in terms of the navigator, the same as 26. Now, change from 25 or 24 was that the project chooser window drop-down menus on the right side. It used to be on the left side next to these four images. I'm not sure why they moved it. Maybe just so it would say, hey, these are different ways of seeing your project. This is a way of opening up some other windows or other projects in relationship to it. So it's called the project chooser. Anyway, the view map is exactly the same as far as I can tell. However, if we look at any of the views, so this view here, AXO planned status. So this is, you know, obviously a 3D view of this model, and with the description that is planned status, meaning this is a remodel project. This is what it's going to end up looking like. And I can go back to, say, AXO existing here, and we'll see in a second that this little add-on goes away. If I go to plan status here, we'll see it pop back in. So this is using the remodel functionality that's been built into Archicad since version 15. This wall, for example, is, if I hover over it, it'll say, where it doesn't actually say that it's new. They're interesting. I thought that this would show it in the preview, but with this wall selected, actually it's in the window palettes where we have, where's renovation? All of a sudden, I'm not, here's renovation. Okay, so this particular wall is new, whereas this wall is existing, okay? And when I switch from plan status to existing plan, then it switches here. And this wall, this piece of wall is demo. It's going to be removed in order to go to the planned status there. All right, so this has been around since Archicad 15. Generally works pretty well for simple design, the simplified design process, which is we have an existing building, we're going to make some changes. At the end, we're going to have a new building or a new version of the building, and some of the stuff gets removed, other stuff gets added, and with a little bit of finagling, we can say something's got changed, meaning like some walls have new windows, or some walls have different cladding, or the roof has been extended or cut back. You know, there are some things where if the same element exists in both conditions, in both old and new, but it's changed, sometimes it's graceful, sometimes you have to have two versions of it, even though you're not deleting one wall and demoing it and putting up a new one, you're just changing the cladding. Anyway, that's the remodel one. Now, what do we have in addition? Well, if I open up the settings of the view here, and why are the settings not coming? Oh, somehow it clicked in there. So if I open up the settings, we can say in the view settings, we have the same stuff as we're used to, but you'll notice this new thing, which is design options. Okay, so this is just integrated, I'd say very gracefully, into the context of, you know, our views. So I can switch from one to another, except I only have one option combination, and that is the main model. So when we want to, and we have set up different design options, we'll be able to switch it here. We'll be able to record it in each view. So when you double click on a view, you can say, hey, I want to have version 1 of the facade, version 2, version 3 of the facade, etc. And so this will be a combination, meaning, as I said earlier, one of each, one appetizer, one main course, one dessert, or one of this area, one version of that area, one version of possibly third or fourth different ones. So it works in with the view settings. Now let's just see. I'm not going to try to do it within this file. I'll go back to, you know, a generic new file in Archicad 27, because I don't want to try to do something realistic with that little model. I'd rather do something just for testing purposes. So let's just draw a box of walls here, and I'll just do, so we'll do now just a sequence here. So just the most basic thing, say this is potentially new stuff, okay? And then maybe I'm gonna have a different version of it, you know, one that's, you know, just a different shape, just to see how this works. So we're gonna open up the window palettes, and I think this would be under design options here. So what is the design options? Right now we have the main model, you know, such as it is. And I want to start working on it, so I'll click on this button to open up the design option manager. So obviously with working on one screen, this starts to get pretty cluttered. Having the ability to put it off on a separate screen, you know, would make it very convenient. So I'm going to select, design options appear here. So let's just create a new combination here, and we'll just call this demo. Well, not demo, this is a test one, okay? There, and I'll create a new design option set, and we'll call this small extension here, and a new one, which will be bigger extension. Okay, so what I've defined is that there are now going to be two variations we're going to look at just as a test, one smaller, one bigger. And what does it refer to? Right now, nothing. There's no elements that are part of it. Now, I have not done this. This is, you know, frank admission. I've seen a couple of things demonstrated, I've seen some videos. I haven't actually done this, so let's see. Can I figure it out? And if I can't, maybe one of you can help me. I can click here, and I notice I cannot it's beeping at me saying, yeah, you know, when you have this thing open, you can't do that. Now, how do we do this? This says this would be creating a full, add an option set. So this would be another option set. Here you can see it's highlighted. Let me get rid of that. With that highlighted, get rid of it. All right, so I can't select elements here. So I'm just going to say OK. See small option, bigger extension. All right, so let me see now, if I select these guys here, can I go and right click on no, not help? Let's put on small extension here. And can I add them to that extension, or where do I do that? Relink here, selected 3, relink. Okay, now you're still selected and they're linked. So now if I turn on bigger extension, you see they go away. Here they are. Okay. Now this is fade environment. Interesting. Okay, so here's where I'm going to stumble, and it probably isn't worth me stumbling too much today. But let's just say that because what it is saying fade environment. I'm going to turn that off. So what is the environment? I would think the main model would be all of this stuff, and this would be the new thing. So if I select this, and can I highlight the main model, and it doesn't let me relink that. Selected elements are linked to the selected option here. Okay, if I select this, I could relink it to the main model. Okay, that would be the work, but I still don't understand why fading environment is making this faded necessarily, but we'll just see. Now I'm going to go and switch to the bigger extension. There's nothing there, and let me go and draw a different version of this. Okay. Now we'll just select these guys, and if I relink them to the one that's highlighted here, now these guys are part of the bigger extension. And if I switch between small extension here and bigger extension, you can see what it does. Now, right now, I'm wondering, why are we not seeing any cleanup? Well, we actually are. I just happen to have the walls facing the wrong way, in terms of the cladding on the inside of this. So let's just actually, one thing is we'll go and, whoops, can I select this? Yeah, so I'll select these guys and we'll flip them here. So that, of course, made them a little smaller because now the cladding is on the outside there. And if I switch this to the small extension, I can do the same, just to at least say flip them there. Okay. Now, what if we are getting some cleanup here, although this is a little odd. Let's, how are we going to do this? One thing I haven't figured out would be if this becomes an interior wall compared to that. So what I'll do here is, and this is where some finesse is going to take place. But let's say that I were to trim this. I'm going to be splitting it based on this reference line here, and splitting it again based on this reference line here. Okay, now, and let's say that this question is, what happens when we have the small extension and this goes away? Because with a small extension, I want to remove it. So this would be part of, well, is it part of the main model? I guess is a question here. So let me open up the floor to see someone who's actually gone through this and see if we can have a conversation, because clearly what we want to do, sort of like any remodel, is say this was in the existing condition, but it's no longer in the new one. So let's just see. So Nestor has a question. In version 27, can you have different knobs or handles in one cabinet, and also double drawers like double hung in its doors? Okay, we can take a look at that. My guess is They haven't talked about the cabinet tool being upgraded. So if you couldn't do it in 25 or 26, my guess is probably you still can't, but we can take a look. Daniel Wyckoff, while Revit can claim to having design options first, you cannot work across options simultaneously. Users must select an option or the main model to work in. Interesting. Okay, so I imagine that Graphisoft has looked at what Revit did and maybe other tools like in mechanical design that have design options, and said, all right, this is what we need to do. We need to make this better and solve that problem. Okay. So Mackenzie says, does the bottom box slider below fade environment allow you to change color? Okay, well, let's just see. That's a quick question here. So fade environment has a slider and it does have choose a custom color. So we could say choose custom color and make this red here. You can see now it's red, and we can make this, solid or fainter. So yes, similar to what we have in trace and reference. So that's pretty straightforward. Now edit default only. Interesting. No, focused editing here. I'm not sure. Okay. So DS, I'm not sure DS what you didn't put in your full name there, but could you change the renovation status and then relink it to the option? Good question. How does renovation status fit in with this? That's a good question. And this is where you'd say the intricacies will get more apparent when we have real context to work with, and frankly, when I have a little more time to play around with it. So let's just see. I'm going to use, since no one else has said, hey, I've worked through this, I can help you, Eric. I'm going to go in and take a moment to say, all right, well, let's see if I take this. Well, let's say that that's going to be demo. So let's complicate things a little bit. So we're going to bring up the renovation palette I haven't brought up in this instance of Archicad renovation palette here. And we'll say that this is going to be demoed here, this element. And then if I switch this to the floor plans, which would be the final version as opposed to the existing plans, when I go to floor plans, that goes away, right? Okay. And when I put it back to existing plans, then this comes, interesting, existing plans. So that's amazing here. Okay, so all visible and unlocked here. So what is this? Oh, these are new. Okay, so everything was labeled as new and this was demo. That's why this existed and the other ones didn't. So let's just select all the walls. Select all the walls here and say that they're all existing except for this piece, which is a demo. And then we can say this is existing. And this is one thing I don't like about Graphisoft standard template. I want to go to the existing plan. I don't really want to go to a dotted line here because I wanted to see the original context. So let me go and edit this. This is a little mini training for a minute. I'm going to go into the renovation filter options and say, when I'm doing existing plans, I don't really want to have existing elements with an override. I want to just show them naturally. So I'm just modifying my file, which could become my template, to say, when I do existing plans, I want to show existing and demo elements just normal, and I just don't want to see new stuff, right? So now, okay, this looks all normal. Now, what about these guys? Now, these are, they're neither existing nor new, they're a different design option. But if I turn on bigger extension, you can see they just go away here. So this is an interesting thing. Now, we can see no cleanup there. It is cleaning up here. So when we switch between it, we can see that it's smart there. And the reason we're seeing this color is because I've got it selected. Actually, no, it's because it's got that color there. So this color is because I've got the fade environment. If I turn off fade environment, then we have cleanup. Now this isn't really a natural wall join because we have the cladding going across. But let's say if we go to floor plans, which would be the final, now it's cleaning up. So have to figure out a little bit more about this. Now, what if we go to the bigger extension here? Well, we have, a new version here. Now, what happens with this piece of wall? So if I select this, so obviously, let's just say that this is going to be removed in that option. So one question I have is, it's not that it's being demoed all the time, it's being demoed in this scheme. How does that work there? So I have to learn about that, or someone maybe on this can, in this call can say if you've played around with it. So Luis, you asked if there's a Slack channel for the Archicad user group. No, we're not using Slack for the general public Archicad user webinar. For those of you who don't know what Slack is, it's a discussion tool, and you can post comments and answer questions and even post files. Use it all the time for my Archicad coaching program. Let me bring up I can pay attention. Let me just see, where is my Slack? Oh, it's off to the side screen here. And let's just see an Archicad training. Okay, so don't see anyone having added there. So let's just stay here in Luis. But if you're in my Archicad coaching program, then when we're having calls, we can use that discussion area. It does allow threaded comments. It does allow everybody to see each other's comments, which right now you can't actually see each other's comments. Okay, so Rob Hancock, what you're trying to demo is not what it's really going to be used for. The main model is at a status in the design that is modeled by the options, and then once you make a decision to accept and apply to the main model then incorporates the chosen option. Okay, let me open up your line here, because while I sort of understand that, you might be able to give me some more clarity. So Rob, your microphone is open. So Rob, you'll need to click on the microphone icon and
got it. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Hey, how you doing?
So you said that, well, I understand the concept of accepting things into the main model, and I think I'll just demonstrate that. If I select these guys and say this is the one we're going to go with, right now they are part of the bigger extension. And
yeah, okay.
I can click on the main model and relink it, and now that's in the main model. And now if I go to small extension here, you can see the main model still has this, the bigger extension there. So when I accepted this into the main model, well, it's by linking it into the main model, then it got put there. But I still don't understand how, or haven't figured out. Yeah, go ahead.
That's not really the power of that tool. So really what you generally have is let's say your house, and then you've got a couple of extension ideas that you want to model, and you will have to do an element of on your small extension, for example, you've got a demolition wall that's only so big, and you have to use the standard renovation filters to do what you need to do that. Now, I haven't yet figured out a way of doing what you're trying to do, which is like I'll have a small extension and a big extension, because actually what you're doing is you're manipulating the east side wall in your case here for two different models, for two different options, and that's what you can't do is do too many changes to the main model. So the classic use of design options is that you're going to make some cut throughs. So you're going to if you had a longer extension and a shorter extension, for example, but your demolition wall is still the same size, that is classically what you're doing, because you've got an opening that you will make, and that'll be costed, and the steel's designed to do that. And then your options inside your extension A and extension B can have different scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have windows and external doors going off different walls, and you can model that as option A, B, C, D, and so forth.
Right.
Then in the design option manager tool, you discuss these different options, etc., 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 and then there is a consensus of opinion, and you go with option C, and you accept it in the design manager tool. And it's not in that palette that you're looking at there, Eric. It's in the main. That's it. So in there is above the OK button, there is an accept and merge. Okay, so when you highlight the small extension or the bigger extension on that palette, so go to your right, and so you know where you've got your two options.
If I highlight the bigger extension,
if you double click and highlight, you normally then and against.
Okay, so this one could be accepted and merged. The bigger extension, apparently, there's nothing in it right now.
Yeah, there are no elements. Yeah, haven't assigned them.
So, all right, so this accept and merge says, all right, that's going to go into the main model.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm going to try one experiment here. Just I'm going to undo, see if we can undo back the changes here. Okay, so now at this point, this actually, let's go back another step there. Okay, at this point, this wall is in its original condition. So here's our existing condition, right? Now, if I turn on the small extension, this is what's going to be added, and this wall has to be different, right?
Correct. So you have to use your renovation.
I'm going to create a new option in this here, so it's going to be a new one, and it's going to be original context. So I don't know if this is exactly the way it makes sense to do it, but we'll try this to see how it works. So I'll say I've created an original context, and in the original context, this doesn't exist, right? And I'm going to lock this existing wall into the original context. I'm going to link it in. So when I switch to the small extension,
it goes away.
So if I turn this back on and I select this, and now how do we get it so that it also exists in the small extension, but then we're going to have to, remove part of it. I'm going to copy it. So I just did a copy with the keyboard shortcut. I'm going to go to small extension and paste. Elements have been created in currently inactive design options here. Okay, so that's not going to work because it is in the wrong one.
Yeah. Okay. In the context of what you're trying to do now, actually, your main model is.
So
actually.
I'm gonna cancel that one here. Yeah. So how do I get a copy of this into another one there?
So in the main model, whatever comes off the main model has to appear in every option thereafter. So
I'm saying that this full length wall only is in the original context. It's going to be modified in these other two. So how do we get a copy of it so I can make modified versions for these other two?
Okay. So if that was an existing wall, which is what you're trying to describe to me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What you're trying, what you're trying to do there, that will have to exist in both of your options.
But in one case, I'm
Yeah,
demoing a small part. In another case, I'm demoing a big part. And of course, in the original context, it's undisturbed. So what I'm going to propose, since it seems like you haven't necessarily got an instant answer, I'm just going to drag a copy of this just as a test here. So I'm just going to drag a copy of it, 20 feet over to the side. Okay. And now I'm going to make this part of the main model here, just temporarily. Now I'm going to switch to the small extension and drag this in to here, and then make it part of this small extension. And then trim, I just use this piece here. So now this piece and this piece here are part of the small extension, and of course this has disappeared. Now if I switch to the original context, I have the original wall. When I go to the small extension, I have a new, these two new pieces along with all of these other ones in there. And if I go to the bigger extension, right now, okay, so this one, what is it? This one should be part of the small extension. Let me go back to the small extension and make this, relink it to the small extension. So now when I go to the bigger extension, of course, we don't have the thing. So what I'll have to do is paste in, actually, I'll go back to the original context, do this again. There may be a faster way to do this, but because this is linked to the original context, I can't paste it into the other one. At least I don't see a way to do it. So I'm just going to drag a copy of it, just off to the side for convenience.
Yeah.
Here. And then, whoops, and then when I am ready, then I say that this is linked to the main model. And now if I go to the bigger extension, I'm going to take this and drag it down here, link it into the bigger extension here, and then, of course, kill the this. So now when I go to the small extension,
all right,
or the original one. Now there's something a little bit funny here, the small extension. This piece, for some reason, or one of them is, what do you call it? There's two pieces here. I think that it's probably
I think, yeah, I mean, very simply, okay, what you've now got is your main model is actually only 3 walls.
Yeah.
And then your options A, B, and C are your original context, which is your original building. Okay, that is option C in your case, or option 3.
Yeah.
Because your main building is actually has only 3 walls at this stage.
That's right. Yeah, I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible. So if I say only show what they all share in common,
that's it.
If I say this was the original context, now when I do a small extension, we have different versions of this wall, because we're removing that, and of course this new stuff. And when I do this one, I have a different version of that wall, etc. So this is working the way I want it. My main question is, there's got to be a faster way to take that existing piece of wall and say, I want it in another context as well.
I think what you're trying to model there is something that is not the way the design option tool was set up for. So, in a context where you've got an existing building and you're going to create extension A, a concept extension A and a concept extension B, at some point you have to make a decision about how big that opening is going to be.
Yeah, well, I want to be able to see it plainly, though, the 3 different versions. So this is at least a workable way. We are able to get, multiple versions and just say, hey, something that has to be reconfigured depending upon which of the other things, we have to have 3 copies of it. At least that's what I'm seeing right now. So we'll see how that works.
Unfortunately, it kind of mucks up with the renovation tool, the way that you're using it in the context there. I think it could be a very powerful tool, more to do with like kitchen layouts, bathroom layouts, window positions is probably more of a useful function of design options, or
Right.
a root design.
Mm-hmm.
So the main bricks and mortar are what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Internal walls, it'll be good for internal walls, right? I could see
Well,
that being.
there's some things that are obviously going to be very simple and just make so perfect. And there are other things like this where, well, I want to be able to show, I want to be able to show different contexts here. And
Yeah,
some things, some existing elements have to be in multiple versions because these are new in each of these, obviously, whereas this is got several versions of it. So what's the best way to have a copy of it that you modify? Um, so so we'll take a look. I do see some nice comments or some interesting questions and comments. Michael Wangan says, sounds like what he's saying is you cannot have more than one demolition option. So yeah, we're talking about how does this fit in with demolition stuff. Um, uh, so I want different versions of the wall. I don't necessarily want to have to engage in demolition options. But Mackenzie, let me open Mackenzie's line because Mackenzie's been a guest presenter, and I know she's always looking at the best ways to do things. So Mackenzie, let me open up your line. You asked, have you noticed if the design options are renovation filter specific, i.e. can a demoed element be linked under a design option? And question 2, can the same element be tagged in multiple design options? Oh, but you have no mic today. Sorry, I just saw that. Can the north part of the demo wall be tagged in small and big? No. Okay, so one thing that's clear is if you have something linked to, says it's relinked. If I click on any other one, I can link it to another thing, or I can link it to the main model, which would essentially be much the same as accept, merge and accept that you were talking about there. When this is open, I can't actually click here. It beeps. So this is a little pointing that it's not a floating palette. It's a modal dialog box. But can we have, the question was, are design options renovation filter specific? And I would wager that these are independent of the situation. So let's say that in smaller extension here, if I had left this alone and said that it was a demo, then we might have had that ability. But the problem is that we have, in one case, we have a demo here, in another case, we have a demo that's longer. So we have to explore that. The design option does not specify. I can switch between these things and it doesn't change which design option is there. But the view, remember a view can say, I want it in the existing condition or I want it in the new condition. Now, of course, design options to some extent by their very nature are all new, because you're saying, which one do I want? Unless you're saying that this is a new building and so everything is existing in terms of, nothing's there and we're going to call it existing because that's what it's going to be when it's done. All right, so it's Ryan Gear. Hey, Ryan, will design options not work in documentation, meaning I can show A, B, and C elevation options? Actually, they do work. So let's just take a look. This is not much to see, but we'll go to elevation. So we have elevations, and there would be an east elevation that would show this. Okay, and if I switch this to small extension, you can see what it's doing here. If I go to bigger extension or I go to original context. So this does exactly the same thing. And in 3D, it would be the same thing. So we'll take a view here. Now, interesting. Oh, turn on original context. turn on small extension, turn on bigger extension. So it works in plan, elevations and sections, 3D, and in schedules. So
Yeah,
basically everywhere.
and in that view there, Eric, excuse me for butting in, if you use the fade environment, then that will highlight the main and the new, the new component, the new option. Yeah, okay, you've got your colors you've got a color scheme there that's.
Yeah. So one question is, I think of, and this comes from when you're editing curtain walls or railings. There's a few places where there's a context of environment or stairs, and you say, I'm working on the stair, and you know, it's got a bunch of stuff, walls around it, things like that. Let me hide the environment. So now I'm just seeing the stair, or I'm just seeing the railing, etc. So environment would be the other stuff. So why does fade environment fade the actual one that is being highlighted? That's not fade, that's sort of highlight the, well, fade or highlight the current option set. To me,
Yeah, I think it's just the way your color scheme is set up, or your working environment there.
well,
'Cause it's normally
originally
the
it
other way
was
around.
gray. Originally it was gray, and you know, obviously this is see-through for the new one, you
That's
know,
right.
and this is solid, you know. So in any event, fade environment to me is confusing. You know, I could say it's
Yeah.
misleading, but it's certainly different than the meaning of a environment, because we're not fading the environment, we're fading the design, or we're making it a different color. So anyway, that's how I see it. All right. Okay, so that answered Ryan's question about can you see it in elevation? Yes, absolutely. All right, Mark Hess. Hi, Mark. I don't know if this helps, but as I understand it, design options is really for design documentation option content, not what we would think of intuitively, alternative design solutions that can be flipped on and off. I'm still experimenting to see if we can do more of the latter in some way. Well, I disagree. I think design options are alternative design solutions that can be flipped on and off, because basically I can, you know, click the eyeball for any one of those and it will show, and I can turn off the eyeball to say show none of them. And the power of this compared to renovation stuff, because we've had similar options with the renovation, is that we can have one group in one area, let's say the kitchen, another group in the facade, another group, you know, on the roof, etc. So they're independent groups of things. Okay. All right, so Eric Gedney says, rather than going down a rabbit trail, can you stay at a high level for the sake of time? And with respect, you need to play with this before having a seminar about it. I agree. I take that criticism, and yes, I am wasted some time here, and that's the reality in terms of what I had available. So I get a less than an A grade for today. Okay, and Acton Design Services, make it an existing wall to begin with, start your walls with an existing. Okay, we did do that. You can duplicate an entire option as another option, but I don't see a way of duplicating just a part of it. Okay, so that is a question. Okay, really appreciate how you pronounce my last name correctly. Okay, Wangen. So Wangen, am I pronouncing it correctly? I hope so. You must know some German or Norwegian. Okay. All right, Ryan says, I was listening to the commenter and he said that I would have to accept the option before finalizing for drawings. Does he know if I can keep the options for documentation? Yes, you can. You would, but each view. So let's just take a look at the, so if I look at a sheet and we look at, say, exterior elevations. Okay, so here is east elevation. This is, what is this? This is the, well, we know that it's a view of the east side. If you look at it carefully, if we zoom in, it's missing that piece of wall because it doesn't have the original context or these things. So what is this? It is, if I go to the source view, this source view has none of these active. Now I can edit the source view to say I want the original context here and turn off the fade environment there. Okay, so that's obviously not much. Let's go to the view map, east elevation, and redefine this view with current window settings. So now if I go to the sheet and it updates, there we have it. Now we want to have more than one of these elevations, maybe on different sheets or maybe on the same one. So I'm just going to drag a copy of this drawing, such as it is, and actually I'll just drag these both up onto the sheet so we can see it. All right, so how would I have two different versions on either the same sheet or a different sheet? Well, what I need to do is, let's say I'll go back and say, open the source view. The source view is here in the view map. I'm going to create a new view that's based on this. So I'll just say I want to save, this is save current view, and we'll give it a new name, east elevation with small extension. Didn't mean to capitalize, but that's fine. It does highlight that. And I will make another one that's going to be save view and east elevation with bigger extension. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm creating three different views. Right now, these are each the same, but I'll go and take this bigger extension. I'll say, let's put bigger extension on and redefine. And then let's go double click on this one, the small extension, and say, oh, no, we want to have it with the small extension and redefine. Now, if I open up the settings, I could redefine it the other way, which is I can go into the, oh, actually, this is a custom option combination. So one thing we haven't looked at here is just how you create a an option combination for this. So we'll look at that in a moment. But right now, these will be functional. So if I go to the exterior elevation and I say I want to relink this to, instead of the east elevation, I want to link it to CD east elevation with small extension. See here, small extension, and let me just, whoops, I'll just drag one more just to prove the point. So drag a copy of it here, and this one I'm going to relink to the bigger extension. And when I do this, it will pick up the drawing, and it will pick up, of course, the name there. So obviously, very trivial context in terms of just three different, just wall things. But you get the idea that we can have all of these in your documentation, and you don't have to finalize anything. You can always have, rather complete things, even with, floor plans, schedules, everything there. So hopefully that is good. Now, one thing I didn't do, let's go back to the plan and say we want combinations. So having the small extension visible is a custom combination. It's saying, let's do the main model and the small extension, but I really want to create a new combination that is small extension. Now, the thing about this that's not misleading, but can be extended is this could be small extension with kitchen version 1, and then there could be another one that's small extension with kitchen version 2. So each one of these combinations could have a different one here. So I'll say this is a small extension, and it has this one here. And do we have to update it? Let's duplicate, rename. Okay, so there's this small extension. The main model has it off, the small extension has it on. Let's just create a new one here that is bigger extension, and turn this one on there. So now the small extension and the bigger extension. So it looks like the same effort to do these things, but each one of these can have multiple options connected to it. So now I've defined that. And now if I go to the view, this is what the best practices would be. This view here should use not a custom option combination. This one is the small extension. I'll take this here, and I'll take this view. Well, actually, that's the so the view. Okay, I want to be on the. Okay, this settings is that it's going to be the bigger extension here. So now each of these, if I did change the definition of what the big or small extension are, they will be up to date. Generally, you don't want custom, you want it to be linked to a name that you can then tweak or revise. So you don't have to accept it before finalizing drawings. Okay, so Tom Pike says, maybe microenvironment is a better description since the design option could be fairly complex. Okay, all right, that's an interesting wording choice. All right, so I've dived into, I don't know whether you call it the weeds, but I've dived into detail on the design options and at least come up with a couple of things that are usable and are demonstrations of best practices. You're going to be creating different options that are associated with these. Now here it says design option set. Let me just rename this, or actually let's just rename this here, and we'll call this extension east side. All right, and say okay. And you see now it says extension east side. So if we were to do something like interior, let's go in here and say that we'll create a new option set. Let's see, new option set goes down here, and we'll say interior partitions here. So that's now a new option set. And now I can go and start drawing some walls and say, you know, this is so these walls here, maybe we'll change them from that to just something interior. That so these two walls, if we were to create a new, how do we create the new? Don't do it here. We have to go in here and say that I want to create new options. Can we move this? Okay, so this is option 1, and drag this down. And this is going to be option 2. So we're creating new and then putting it into whatever group here. And if I say that these two walls here are option 1, link them there. Now when I go to option 2, they disappear and I can draw some other walls. So this is going to be the simplest case. So now I'll just select these guys and say these are option 2. I'm going to link them to it. So now when I switch to option 1, I get the first group. If I switch to option 2, I get the second group. So that's now these are a new set of options here, but the combinations. So if we say bigger extension, right now the bigger extension is here and it shows neither of these. So I could create one that's big extension interior 1, and that's going to have bigger extension and option 1. And then I'm going to create a new one that's big extension interior 2 here, and that's going to have this one and option 2. So now I can switch between, and this is down here, I can switch between big extension interior 1, big extension interior 2, and then I can also have, small extension here. So with the small extension, these were both off. I just have to create another combination if I wanted to do that. But the nice thing about this system is that you can just on the fly say, oh, well, let me look at it with this on or that on. You don't have to worry about necessarily creating a combination just to do some design studies. So, all right. So Daniel, thank you. You shares, I personally like the fact that you're exploring rather than some canned presentation that shows everything working smoothly. You can learn as much by trial and error than by only knowing that it worked for the presenter. All right, I appreciate that. We've been going an hour and a half. Let me see if there's some other questions. I know the other thing that I wanted to experiment with, and again, stumbled, but I'll see if I can figure it out with some assistance possibly, is the ones that place elements at a certain distance or move things to a new relationship, because I want to play with that. And let's see, so looking at, so Rosemary's question about can you select a few objects from the main model and duplicate them into a different option? Right now, the only way I see is to literally copy and paste, having changed and then reassign it. And it's I'll play around with it to see if there's something better. And can windows be in design options while the wall is existing in the base option? That's a good question. Let's just take a quick look at that. And Rosemary, I'm going to open up your line if you're still on the call. Yeah, there you are. Okay. So if I pop in a window in here and I select that window, and I make this part of option 1, link it. All right, so now if I turn off option 1, the partitions go away and the windows. So yes, windows and doors appear to be part of an option. So hey, we're gonna do some partitions here and we're gonna put in a window. So Rosemary, your line is open. If you have a microphone, you can say hello and ask a follow-up question if you like. Okay.
Yeah, if you have some windows that you're going to demolish and replace them with bigger ones, I can see all kinds of difficulty if they're partially overlapping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, again, I did have something that this idea of the original context and then variations does give you the flexibility without having to invoke the renovation filter of saying, something exists in the original context here, and then it gets changed, possibly removed, etc. When you have a new thing. So we could have a window. So here's the original context. Let's pop in a window here, and we'll make it bigger. So it's something like that. So that's the original. It will be. I'll say, I want to highlight this and say this is part of the original context. And so when I switch this to the small extension, it disappears here. Now, if I do option 1, we have that window. So I'd have to actually have the original context for the interior partitions. I'd have to have a similar thing, so the window obviously has nothing to do with this extension. So in fact, let's just go and quickly say, in terms of the interior partitions, we'll create a new one here and we'll call this original context there. So that now exists. And so we'll say, hey, we're gonna have the wall like here. We're gonna take this, whoops, let me select this window and say this is linked to the original context. So now when I switch to option 1, we have the new window. Here's the original window, okay, there. And then that's independent of what's going on the other side there. And then you can have combinations which will show your choice of bigger in option 1 or bigger in option 2 or whatever. But so this would be, I don't know whether Graphisoft, you know, teaches this or intends it, but it's a quick, I wouldn't say workaround, it's a quick way to have essentially demo elements, you know, things that are going to be changed without having to go to renovation filters. That make sense?
Yeah, good.
Okay, so that's, I'd say it's quite functional. I don't know if there's a better way to do it. So, okay, so Mackenzie says, thanks for test driving the design options. I think this sort of test drive is incredibly helpful and interesting to your collaboration between you and other attendees. Okay, well, I'm glad you're enjoying it and finding it useful. All right, so I'm just looking at other questions here. Yeah, okay, so let me go to this other area, which I think, you know, this is clearly brand new functionality. Going to take a little getting used to, you know, and for me as a teacher, the only way I get used to it is play with it and answer questions and figure out, well, how would I do that? But then the other thing that I think is very, very useful potentially is this placement of elements. So if I were to go and put in a column and I just go click on this, I'm not getting any guides there. Now, if I were to drag this column and say drag, you can see the tracker, okay. But there is this thing that they showed where you say, well, how far do I want it from each of these? And of course, the column maybe, you know, well, you certainly need control over it, but they show things like toilets or, you know, interior walls. How do we get to see that? Well, they mentioned somewhere that it is an experimental feature, and I'm going to guess under the work environment, tracker and coordinate input, that they might have this. So always tracker custom. It's not in here. So on screen
Go into more options, Eric.
It is under more options.
Two up.
Two up, there we go. Thank you. Experimental features. So this is carefully hidden. And thank you so much, because it would have taken me, you know, a few minutes to figure out where it was. I sort of knew that it was in the work environment. All right, so we have a bunch of things that they're saying, turn it on if you find it useful, great. And if you don't, then turn it off. And okay, so here we have enable distance guides. Okay. Now, one reason why they probably have it turned on and off this way is that it may get in the way of work. All right. So now if look at this, I've got it selected. I deselect, it goes away. All right. Now, as I say, hey, I'm going to put in a column, it's showing where it is. Okay. So if I place it, now, if I select it, I can say, oh, I want this to be, you know, 4 feet from there, and it moves. Or I want this to be 1'6" from there, and it moves. So that's very cool. But of course, every time you select something, it's going to have, you know, this stuff on screen. So there is a thing. Where is it? Is it show height tracker, show guides? I thought I saw something here. I think there's supposed to be something where you can turn it on or off in a button. So I will have to look at that, because maybe you have to edit the top thing, you know, these shortcut buttons to do it. Because
it's in work environment.
It's in work environment. So I go option work environment. So we're in work environment, and should I go back to more options?
Tracker and coordinate input.
Tracker and coordinate input.
And you've got it there. So on demand.
2 edges. Okay, so this is an option for, is it measuring to the edge of the wall or to the reference line of the wall? Okay, so, but I'm not seeing something that allows you to turn it on or off or change options up here. Now, unless this is, So what is, it's like hover over it, show hide tracker. Yeah, so it doesn't have, there may be a button. Let me just see quick thing. We can customize under, this would be, no, it's under window palette, no, options, work environment, and we have, it's down in toolbars here. So the standard toolbar here is the one that we're seeing up at the top of the screen. You can see the pan, the undo, redo here. And these are the various ones that are controlled. Now, is there one here for distance? So is that what it was called? Just, yeah, we don't have something for distance. So because it's experimental, they may not have that. They have trace on and off, grid snap on and off, hide tracker. Don't see anything. Okay, so I'll have to see if there is something. It's possible that it doesn't exist, that you either have it on or off, but you have to go in through the work environment to do that. In any event, that's how simple it is. I think the great thing is, hey, I want this to be, this room to have so much clear space, right? So you go click here and you say, I want it to be 12'6", and it moves that wall over. Now it didn't extend the other one. So let's see, if I select both of these, no, now I don't have any extension. So it is, you'll have to do some cleanup. So if I say that I want it to be 12'6", now that's moved over, I can select this wall and then do an intersect. So that's certainly doable. If you pop in a door, so that's another classic thing is, how far do I want this door? Let's say that I put it in by corner. Here, flip this corner here. Okay, so you can see that there are some numbers, and if I wanted, let me just zoom in on this. If I wanted it to be a certain distance from the corner, I can do two things. One is I can pop it in here. And I hate this, absolutely hate it. This is part of the standard US template that says when you have the default settings for your model view options, you're going to show all the information you can, including, well, you shouldn't put anything too close to the door when you swing it open. I'm going to say, no, I want to look in floor plans here. Now that looks there, but I hate that all visible is the default and it shows all that. But in any event, if I select this as you would expect, I can say that I want this to be, 6 inches from the corner or something like that. Now let me just delete it. And I think that there's a way to do it when you're popping it in. So I haven't popped it in yet. If I hit the tab key, it does highlight that. And then I can say, oh, I want it to be 8 inches. And that is going to be 8 inches. So that is really useful, to be able to do that. So obviously we'd have the same thing with the window, popping it in and it's showing it how far it is. I hit the tab key and it's going to highlight one of these. Now, of course, this is measuring from the outside, which maybe I care about the inside. So let's just see if I leave this alone and just hit enter. If I click and pop it in, can I get feedback based on the interior wall here? Interesting, it's not, oh, it is showing that when I zoom out and when I zoom in. So I have to zoom out to be able to see this. If I'm zoomed in, then it's only showing whatever can be seen here, but it's not showing it in relationship to that wall. Now, maybe that if the window was flipped, I mean, this being the outside, but maybe if I move, we don't actually have the flip in here. You have to select it here, flip. Does that? No, it's still only at the end of the wall here. So, okay, that's, if you cared about how far it was from there, that appears to not be something that you can control. or you can use this feature for. So I'm going to ask to see if anyone has questions on this. I think this is something with just 5 minutes of playing around, you can get pretty familiar with it and use it a lot. Okay. So let's see. Tom, so you'll find it in work. Okay, so thanks for test drive. Okay, Rob says you'll find it in work environment. That was from 8 minutes ago. So I think we've already done that. Tom says, would all windows in the design options show up on a window schedule or just the ones in the main model? So Tom, the good news from what I gathered, just a quick look at the Graphisoft thing, it says that design options are now integrated into all the different areas, including schedules. So if we go to a schedule, so I'm going to go to, well, let's go to we're in a view here, doors and windows. So we have window schedule. All right, so we have one window that's pretty small here. This is a view, and what are the settings? It says main model only. So let me just switch it to interior 1, and there we go. So, and in fact, this is, it looks like we can't switch this on the fly. I can't click on these things, but I can set this up in terms of the settings to be which one. So interior 1 had that bigger window, interior 2 had a no window there, or had the smaller window. Anyway, without trying to really decipher it exactly, I'll just say that your view settings for the schedule include the option combination, and the option combination defines what windows exist as well as everything else. And so you can have a schedule for each possible design option combination. That's at minimum, I know what it can do that. I don't know if there's some other fancy things like have one part of the schedule show one design option, another part show another one. I don't know about that. All right, so Mark Hesse says, you've demonstrated the design options for alternate ideas. I missed the beginning of the sessions where you created the original content component to avoid renovation status issues I've been having trouble with. Okay, so very briefly going back, tracking there, Mark, let me open up your line. Always nice to talk to you. So your line is open.
Oh, hi, Eric.
Hey, so what I did here, if I just say, this allows me to change things on the fly. I'll just say turn off all of these options. So I had 4 walls, and the 4th wall was part of the main model. But when it's not part of the main model, you can't have different versions of it. So I created this. I took this wall and I said, let's make it not part of the main model. Let's make it on a version that says this is the original before any changes. Yeah. It's essentially existing, or you could call it a demo. Something that's going to be changed when we get to a new one. And then when I switched it to small extension, that original long wall is disappeared because it's one of the options, and I have 2 smaller walls in its place. And I literally just copied and pasted it in and then removed the center and made sure that each one of these pieces of wall was linked to the small extension. Now the larger extension here, or the bigger extension, has different one. This is actually a slightly different piece. It's linked to the bigger extension. And when I go to the small one, if you look closely, you'll see it changed just a hair. It was just a little bit.
It's considered new though, right? Which it sort of is and it sort of isn't, because in reality they probably would reframe the whole thing, but technically,
yeah, I'm
it's
not
existing.
I'm not using the renovation filters in this case.
Right.
I'm saying different versions of it. Here's the original one. Here are 2 alternate things, and things that have to change, like this long wall. I basically my workaround, and maybe it's the only workaround, maybe it's the best practice, I think it is to say anything that has to change has to be linked to an option. And if you want to see what it was before, you create something, give it a name, original context, or something like that.
So if you wanted your quantity takeoffs to be accurate, you'd have to accept and merge at that point one of those options, and then that way it gives you the right data.
Yeah, so how do you get quantity takeoffs? Well, one way is that you have a schedule that shows your window schedule or how much concrete or whatever. Well, each of those schedules, as I demonstrated briefly, is linked to, or you can have a view that defines that schedule that gets placed onto a sheet as a drawing. It is a drawing, even though it's just text or numbers or whatever. And that view is associated with the design option. So you can easily, in that scenario, say, well, in this design option where we have the big windows in the front and we have the thing there and we have that thing there, here's our totals for something or another. Here's our total cost for windows or our total cost for concrete. So your schedules can, beautifully fit into the design options.
Yeah, great, thank you. Thanks for spending time on that. That's really great.
Well, there's a lot of other things in 27, or let me just say, these are the two things that jumped out to me. Obviously, design options is a major thing because it fits into plans and elevations and schedules and views and all sorts of things. The view distance things. Hey, I never had a problem placing things, but newer users certainly. It was always, well, how do you get it to be there? And oh, that's so awkward. I don't understand it. I think this will be a lot easier for newer users. And frankly, yeah, if you don't mind seeing these distances pop up, then placing doors into the right places or furniture in the right offsets, and quickly just getting partitions, the right clear space. Yeah, it is quite nice to see a dimension on screen, just type in a number and have that. So I think I'll use it, and I think many of you will start using these distance things all the time. Other stuff that they've just sort of finished up, in what do you call it? In Archicad 26, they started to introduce folders. So when we click on folders here, I can say, well, I want to look at and maybe turn on or off different parts of the landscape. I double click on landscape. These are the layers that are on here and I can see them. I go back to architecture 3D. I see those, or architecture 2D. So these are groups and it's just easier to find things. But even if you have the one that shows all of them, you can type in and saying, well, what layer are the roofs on? Type in roof. Hey, there's only one there. What layer are beams on? Okay. You don't have to go search through the long list. Or wall. Well, here's the different wall types, the wall layers. So that's a search thing. Now, where it gets even more useful sometimes is under going into, let's say, building materials, and you want to find and work on something here that's for brick. Okay, it's not shown here. Why is that? Building materials should have brick there because right now we're in a folder. Now, I don't like this. I'm looking for brick. It's not giving me the choice of going into other folders. I have to switch to, well, it looks like I have to either go to the top level and then do brick. No, not in the top level. There. I have to go to the list one and then say brick. No. Wait a second, this is where don't we have anything that's brick? We just have masonry. Okay, well maybe that's the issue, is that I was not using the right term. So what are we going to do? Let's just say wall. Okay, there's wall panel, partition. Oh, okay, well these are building materials. I'm forgetting gypsum. come on, gypsum there. Okay, so when I highlight this and then I turn this off, we can see it's in the folder. So have to get used to it a little bit, but basically you can find things and say, hey, I want the gypsum to have a different priority or whatever. And you can use these folders to find the stuff related to particular categories of elements. That's also found in, now they've added it into fills. So you can say, hey, I want to look for the metal fills, or I want to look for the masonry fills, or I want to look for insulation fills. So this is quite nice. They didn't have this in 26. So they've added in the folders in for fills as well as lines. I don't know how much you need to edit lines here, but you can say I want dash lines. If I double click on it, yeah, here are the dash lines. Here's dotted lines. Here's fire lines, etc. There. Wonder if we're using the well, if we're in the wall tool and let's say that we're doing a generic thing and we say, hey, I want to pick something. Okay, so I say I'm going to be doing a wall that's just sort of generic, and I want to say that it's going to be concrete. Just type in the word concrete and it goes finds all the various concrete ones. If I do it on composites and go in here and type in concrete, these are two variations of concrete walls, or we have partition, no, exterior, no. So what is it? Well, all of these are walls. So I guess you have to say wood. That wood be the wood framed walls. Just type that in. So these search things allow you to much more quickly find that. I think that'll be, I may forget about using it, because I'm not used to it, but I do think, hey, you just want to find your partition wall, just have to remember, oh, okay, it's wood frame. That's what I'm going to type in. I suppose in the international version, maybe it's going to say timber instead of wood, but anyway, so those search things are there, and they are also in apparently attributes here, and you can search for brick. Okay, so there are brick fills, there are brick surfaces, there are complex profiles that have the word brick in there, and you can then go find those things. And apparently, if I go click on this, it says this brick surface has an appearance that is, it has a fill associated with it. So when you're seeing it in an elevation, it's going to have this brick common bond there. If I hover over this, you can see that it's also got a picture, the image brick common bond opt. That's sort of what it's going to look like in a rendering or in a 3D view. The name of it is called brick common bond, etc. If I go to color brick, then you can see it's got some differences, or this is a fill, and you can see here's a preview. So they've done some nice things to just make it easier to see, find things, and to go edit some of the stuff. And then you can always just say, show me everything, or show me a whole of stuff. This is on and on. This is in folders based on fills, lines, surfaces, etc. So I haven't explored the attribute palette here, but it would complement Attribute Manager as well, where you're going to be potentially bringing stuff into or out of project to manage. You have somebody created a new project in your office and they've added in some new surface appearances or surfaces, and you can bring those into your template, or you can copy from one project to another with Attribute Manager. All right, so those would be some other things that I think are pretty cool. And this is interesting. I'm moving my mouse around and it's giving me this number here because I'm starting to put in a wall. So if I wanted this wall to be a certain distance in, I can hit the Tab key and say, oh, I want it to be 10 feet, hit Enter. Now it clicked where my mouse was. So of course I could take this down to finish that. And then I can select this and I guess extend it to here, so that's relatively good. Now why it says 9'7", didn't I say 10 feet? That's interesting. It's probably because I was drawing on this side and it's a 5-inch wall, generic wall there. Of course, if I, flip this, then here's the 10-foot there. All right, now if I were to go just, if I go say, I'm going to draw the wall and I'm actually on the face, now I can see how far it is from those. So I think this will be very useful. So let me see if there's any final comments. We've gone full 2 hours. So David says, what time does the coaching call start? The earlier email said it would be from 3 to 6. So I had sent another email and I posted it. Well, actually, I posted it in Slack, sorry, that the coaching calls usually start at 1 o'clock, but once a month when I run the Archicad user, they start at 3 or 3:15. So in about 15 minutes, I'll start the coaching call. And Tom says, will SEOs be preserved when merging a desired option into the main model? My guess is yes. How would we test that? Let me just open up, Tom. You've asked some great questions, so I'm going to open up your line. There, Tom. Okay, so let's just see an SEO. So I'm going to go into the simplest case of an SEO would be a roof, and I'll just say draw just a simple shed roof, starting here, going up that way, and I'll just take this out of the way over to here, and let's go back to just the original context, and we'll select all the walls. Except for the inch. Well, I'll take all the walls up. I'll take them to, why is the wall height fixed here? I've got all these walls. Oh, I have to say that it's not linked here, and then I can say, oh, they're going to be up to 15 feet. All right. So now if I go to 3D, what do I have? I have taller walls. There is this roof that I didn't say what height it was if I select all the walls. This roof, let me just drag this up or tell it to be at 10-foot level there, and then give it a slope of 4 and 12. Whoops, let's see, 4 inches and 12 inches, or make it shallower, 1 inch, 1 in there. Okay, so now this is a slope. Now I'm going to go and select these walls that exist here. Now, okay, we wanted this to be when we merge it into there. So let's say that this roof is part of the big extension. I don't know, this is going to be a little bit funny, but I'll say that this is going to be relinked to the big extension. So now when I say small extension, the roof goes away. Here's the big extension. So with the big extension, can I trim solid element operations? So if I select these walls, and I've got the bigger extension showing, and let's do our design, solid element operations, and we'll say these guys are, let me select all 3 of these walls here and say add them as target, make this roof an operator and do subtraction with upward extrusion, execute. All right, and maybe make this one here also a target, and again take this roof and add it as an operator and trim it. Okay, so now I have that. Now if I go back to original context, the roof goes away and these walls go back to there. When I go to the bigger extension, there. Okay, so first thing, hooray. That means that solid element operations are associated with the, well, they lose their effect if the element that they're associated with is not in the model. If you think about solid element operations just in general, in order for things to have an effect, they have to stay in the model. If I deleted the roof, those walls would spring back up. If the roof is there and I've told it to be a trimming plane, then the targets of that are going to be affected. And if we generalize it, saying, well, if this option has that these elements visible or included, they could be hidden. You know, so in other words, I could say take this layer and I could go to the layer, hide the layer. Well, hiding layers, they're still trimmed, you know, but now if I go back to the original context, they come here, bigger extension. So even though the layer is turned off, it's still in the model. Let me just switch, you know, layers to, I don't know, exterior elevations there. Okay. So this works very nicely here. Now, if I say that this guy here is no longer part of the extension, it should be accepted as part of the main model, relink, no problem. Now, regardless, when I go back to original context here, it's still there. So it's basically if the element is visible either in a design option or as part of the main model, then whatever it's doing with the SEO, solid element operations, is active. So Tom, your line is open. I don't know if you want to say something, but I think the resolution of that is it does what you need, which is it keeps the relationship if the design option is visible or if it's part of the main model.
I just want to say thank you. That's what I wanted to see.
Yay. Okay. So Tom Palmer just says, was this recorded? I missed most of today. Yes, yep, it's being recorded. So I will post it on my YouTube channel, and then at some time sooner rather than later, I'll post it on the Archicad user website. So we've been going a little over 2 hours, probably a good time to finish. I wish I had not stumbled. I wish I had known everything beforehand, but at least most of what I intended to show you, I was able to figure out, and I'm sure I'll learn more, and we'll all learn more as we, you know, use these features. And I did not talk about BIMX, I didn't talk about rendering, I didn't talk about other stuff, but I think these 3 things, I'm going to say design options, distance guides, and the ability to just search for things in the dialogues are probably going to be the things that I will appreciate and, you know, just be using happily more than other things. Or, you know, there are, I'm sure, other tweaks. And if you're a large firm, you're working on interdisciplinary projects with consultants, then hey, being able to take Revit stuff in, doing stuff with, you know, other consultants, going to be fantastic. But for most of the people who follow me, most of you are doing smaller projects, working on your own. You're not working with, you know, actively with other, consultants using BIM tools. At least that's my impression. Maybe that's changed. In any event, these are the things that I think will make the most difference for, you know, all of us on this call. So thank you for joining me today. Let me know if you have any feedback. You can send an email to support@bobrow.com. If you'd like to get my personal assistance on your Archicad questions, join my Archicad coaching program. You can get access to that going to archicadtraining.com/coaching. So archicadtraining.com is where I host and sell my course called the Archicad Best Practices 2020 course. You can purchase that if you want to get a really robust, extensive set of videos on how to use Archicad. And if you want just the coaching, because you sort of know most of the stuff, but you'd like some help, go to archicadtraining.com/coaching. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next month.